So, welcome to our special edition of the Engage Nation podcast. Today we have Lani joining us. So, she is going to be working with Football Australia over the tournament, and she's also our Digital Engagement Officer at the Office for Women and Sport in Recreation for the Victorian Government. Welcome, Lani.
Thank you for having me, Kay. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Okay, so we're going to get straight into it. I know that you have a long history with football and all things there. So do you want to give us a little bit of a start about where that came in and how that sort of led to the career that you have today?
Yeah, sure. I've been playing football since I was 6 or 7 years old. Always enjoyed playing it. When I got into high school, started to think about what I wanted to do at uni. I really enjoyed writing. I thought maybe I put those two things together. I ended up doing a degree in media and communications, focusing on journalism, and thought for a little bit there that I'd become a sports journalist. Out of uni, I worked a little bit in the social media space for Channel 9 and then kind of moved into the role that I'm currently in at the moment, so Digital Engagement Officer for the Office for Women in Sport and Recreation, and absolutely loving it there at the moment too.
So what is the main mission of the Office for Women in Sport and Recreation? It's the first one of its kind in Australia. So what are you doing there?
So it's a government kind of run office, and we're really just aiming to kind of level the playing field for women and girls in sport and also active recreation, so walking and cycling, running, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of barriers that women face when it comes to sport, and our office is just about helping and giving these women a platform so that they can overcome these barriers, and also just working on, slowly breaking down systemic kind of barriers and issues that women face too.
Yeah. And then you also have an incredible opportunity, especially with the World Cup and through your work with Football Australia. So for a little bit of background, they have announced as part of their Our Game program with Legacy 23 as well. They have the Our Game Women and Non-Binary Persons in Media program. You were the selected recipient for Victoria in the very first intake of the program, which is quite an achievement. So congratulations. What are you planning on doing with that? What is the program, and a little bit about how that all came about?
Yeah, I'm very lucky to be part of this program, the first of its kind. As you've said, part of the legacy plan from Football Australia. It's really focusing on the FIFA Women's World Cup that's coming up over the next couple of weeks. So we've been really lucky. We get to go to a lot of those games, write some feature articles, interview some players. Be in the mix zone, attend post-match press conferences, and really just kind of start to tell some of the stories behind the players at the World Cup, and just to report on that. Earlier in the year, as part of the internship, we got to attend the Cup of Nations games and meet some players. We've also been mentored by lots of different amazing, incredible people in the industry. Samantha Lewis, sports journalist for ABC Sport, she's been a really huge part of the program and mentoring me and all of the other women and non-binary people in this program. So yeah, it's been an incredible experience so far, and I think it's going to be even bigger in the next few weeks while the World Cup is on too.
Yeah, awesome. We'll touch on it a little bit more later in the episode. But I really want to go back to your work with the Office for Women in Sport and Recreation. Like I mentioned, it's the first of its kind in Australia. It came out of that review a couple of years ago into participation of women in sport in Victoria. So what are some of the key intentions and initiatives that your office do? What are you really aiming to achieve with what your work is?
Yeah, as you mentioned, our office is built on the inquiry into women and girls in sport and active recreation. So that happened in 2014, and then our office was formed in 2015. And from there, we had 9 recommendations that our office is working towards achieving in this space. So we have three pillars in our office. So our first one is policy. So we do, I'm not sure if you've heard of Balance the Board policy, but it's about getting over 40% women on community sports boards across Victoria. So that's one of our main policies. Another policy we have at the moment is the Fair Access Roadmap policy, which is about getting equitable infrastructure in community sport for women and girls. So that might include change rooms, access to facilities, lighting, that sort of thing. We also offer a lot of programs for women in the sporting space. So whether that's women in leadership positions, women in media, and then finally, my team that I work in is impact and engagement. So that's all about the social media side, education pieces, and really just getting awareness about who we are as the Change Our Game brand, and what that means out into a wider audience.
Yeah, perfect. And so, like you said, you've been around since 2015. So now that would be 8 years of the office existing. What have been some of the key, what are you seeing at a grassroots level in terms of women in sport? What are some of the barriers that you're seeing? I know as well with your career in community sport and professional sport as a soccer player, what are some of the barriers that you've also experienced to your participation, even at really grassroots or really high levels?
Yeah, totally. I think we've definitely come a long way, as an office in the last 8 years, and even just women's sport in general. I think in 1971 was when the ban on women playing football was lifted. So it's not been that long in the grand kind of scheme of things. So we definitely have come a long way. But the biggest thing that I'm seeing in my role and just in life, I think, is the societal expectations and stereotypes that we force onto women. And I think this comes from some really like deep rooted unconscious biases that we just hold as a society. There's also, a lot of myths and misconceptions that hold women back from playing sport, whether that's, the whole idea that women can't play 5 sets of tennis, why not? Or that, women's sport is boring to watch. These are myths that we're kind of socialized into believing from a young age that I think really do hold women back. There's also like practical barriers too. Our office has just released some research on flexible uniform policies. So in terms of, letting women wear tracksuit pants instead of skirts or dresses, or not having to wear white shorts so that periods are not an issue for girls or women playing sport. Um, Sometimes it's just really small kind of practical things like that really make a big difference and hold girls back from playing sport and then retaining their participation in that sport too.
And then the Women's World Cup, it is the largest global women's sporting event. How, even though that the office isn't necessarily attached to it through the branding, how are you still leveraging that massive tournament to reach new audiences and to really push your messages that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, totally. So I think in my role, it's all about education. So we want to make an impact and an engagement on people who maybe are not already fans of football, maybe who don't know the tournament's on or they don't know that it exists. So my role is to create some really easy to access, engaging, easy to understand content that women can relate to and that they can learn about the sport if they don't already know. And then hopefully we get that kind of movable middle who are maybe not already into football to hop across and come and hop on the bandwagon. So yeah, I mean, I know personally that if I feel connected to a particular player or a team or a sport, I'm more likely to want to learn more and watch those games. So, coming from a media and comm space, if I can share those stories in an engaging and a compelling way, hopefully we get a few more fans of the game long term too.
I know. Well, it's incredible the reach it's already had. We've talked about the million tickets that are already sold. The Matildas games, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack trying to get a ticket to them. It's pretty incredible how wide and how far reaching this tournament is probably going to go as well in terms of increasing women's sport and boosting participation, especially at community levels.
Yeah, I really hope so. I think it's all about telling those stories and then like the longevity and the sustainability of the game further on. Hopefully, we'll have many more girls playing sport and seeing themselves in those positions where in the future they can work in sport or coach or be officials. Just having this visibility on such a worldwide platform, it's massive for the game and just for women's sport in general.
You've done a really good segue about talking about stories because we're going to now talk about your role with Football Australia and your internship in the media program. What a little bit of background on the program, I think. You touched on it at the start a little bit, but what are some of the mentoring opportunities? Who are you being mentored by? How is it coming to fruition?
The women and non-binary persons in sports media program, I'm part of the journalism stream, so the media and comms kind of stream. So a lot of it is about content creation, writing articles, long form journalism, feature pieces, that sort of thing. At the moment, I'm writing a few different articles and pitching them to Keep Up and also to be posted on the Our Game platform itself. We've also, since the beginning of the year, we've been having meetings every week or two, workshops with a whole bunch of different people working in the sports industry. So ABC Sport and Football Australia. We've been lucky enough to hear from Amanda Shalala, Steve Bond, Beth Newman, Joe McDermott, just to name a few. And then, yeah, Samantha Lewis, as I mentioned earlier, she's incredible, just so experienced in football and in writing, and has some really great advice for me and all of the interns in this program. So she's constantly, checking in on us, helping us to refine our perspectives and our writing. So I've gotten so much out of it so far. I just can't wait to see where it goes the rest of this year too.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you touched on the stories. What are the stories for you from this World Cup that inspire you and that you hope to really capture?
Yeah, there's so many. And I think that's what I love about the World Cup and big sporting events is that you can always just write about the match reports, but it's the stories behind that, the stories behind the people in football and behind the players that I think really connects you with the sport. So one of the stories I'm writing at the moment is actually about the Jamaican women's national team and their journey. To get to the World Cup, they had to actually crowdfund in order to even be at the World Cup. And there's been some issues in the past with funding and money to support their national team. So one of the stories that I'm writing is about how important it is to get that investment and that support from a national team level, and also what it means to Jamaican Australian fans of the game that their national team is playing here in Australia. And so I'm going to get to go out and talk to some of those people who are involved and who are really passionate about the game, and hear about why it's important for them to have that visibility, and why they support their women's team. So it's kind of like the more nuanced little stories like that that really I find the most interesting, behind and outside of just the football itself.
It's such a unique thing about sport where you always have like two sort of lines of stories. You have the lines of what is happening on the pitch, and then you have, which usually only as well counts for about 10% of it, and then you have 90%, which is all of the things that happen behind the scenes, all of the background, all of the thing where you really get to buy into someone and buy into a team. What for you are some of those stories as well? I know you touched on the Jamaican team. Are there any other stories, not that you're writing, but just that you've seen that you're really sort of tapping into and looking into?
Yeah, I think I love a bit of a comeback story, or a pushing against all odds kind of story. I know for the Matildas, you look at Claire Hunt and Ellie Carpenter, and they've come from country backgrounds, and have had to travel thousands of kilometers, going to training, hours and hours in the car, to get to where they are now. You look at Claire Hunt, who's been through multiple injuries, so many injuries, years and years of rehab and just dedication, and you see that kind of passion and that commitment to the game. And for me, that's the meaning of football. That's yeah, it takes a certain kind of person to be able to get there, and they're the stories that really inspire me, and I think that really inspire the next generation of girls who want to play the sport when they can see the effort and the passion, the hours, the dedication that these women have put into their sport. That's inspiring.
Yeah, of course. And then I know we've talked about it a little bit off, but another story that you're writing, and it touches on really shining a light onto the people and the roles that you might not necessarily think of, or just showing and highlighting and representing what they do. But you talk as well about the female coaches that are behind the scenes, because it's obviously like it's no secret that football and even administration behind the scenes, the coaching, it's a male's world. What are you sort of trying to capture there with highlighting those female coaches and staff?
For me, it's all about visibility. It's that cliche, you can't be what you can't see. And I think we have done pretty well, in recent years to highlight more women who play sport and who play football. But that kind of elite level coaching, women that coach women's national teams, or women that coach, high level men's teams, even we don't really see that. It's not visible, and that's not because there isn't quality women's coaches out there. It's because a lot of women face barriers that maybe men don't in this way, and then that visibility isn't there. So we've got plenty of elite women's coaches. We've got, just to name a few, Leah Blaney, Ray Dower, Mel Andrietta. They're all coaching at really, really high levels, coaching Australian junior teams. And so I kind of see it as my job to really shine a light on those women, and to show young girls who are watching sport, oh, like, I can not just play sport, but I can also go and coach sport. I can go and officiate sport. I can be a leader in sports management. So if I can write articles that highlight that and show that pathway, then that would make me really happy.
Why do you want to do that? Like, it takes one thing to just sit there and want to highlight things, and you maybe even read or you consume it, but it takes another step to actually go out, find those stories, and really publish them and share them with the world. So I'd love to know why you personally, that drives you.
I think because if we're not sharing those stories, we won't see that they exist. There won't be any visibility on those issues. So to actually go out and talk to those women, see the hardships they've faced, the challenges on the way to get to where they are in their journey, and then to kind of make it really relatable for other women who think, oh, I could do this, but I'm not sure. What's the pathway for me? If I'm able to tell the story of someone else's pathway, someone else's journey, that might encourage more women to say, hey, like, I'm not that far away from that myself. That actually is within reach. I can achieve that. And, if those stories aren't told, then those women might not actually go out and apply for that job, or try to get into coaching, or break those kind of barriers that they have within their own minds.
Yeah, perfect. And then we've touched on it a little bit. We're probably going to touch on it a lot in this series. Is the Legacy 23 plan and Football Australia's sort of goals for obviously using the World Cup as a springboard to really push and drive equal participation and change. As someone who has gone, like I said, gone through the system from when you were 7 and playing community sport, what does that Legacy 23 plan mean to you? Because I'm assuming when you probably read it, you had a lot of like, oh yes, that was me, or this was my experience, and now they're trying to fix it. Why? What does it mean to you? How do you sort of see it happening?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. And like, legacy is this word that's been thrown around so much around the World Cup. And like, what does it actually mean? What does football actually look like in the future? How do we make sure that our game is sustainable and, has really great growth in both the men's and the women's space? For me, as you said, I've been playing football most of my life, and it's given so much back to me. I've got lifelong friends because of football. The social aspect, the fitness, just the lessons that you learn to be passionate about something, even just values of being on time or working hard. Like, football's given me so much, and to be able to leave a legacy of this World Cup into the future, so that other girls and other women growing up can play football and have those same feelings that I've felt, and have that love for the game. To me, that's the biggest legacy that we can leave. Just piggybacking off this World Cup and getting more women involved, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity really to have a World Cup on a home soil right here, to make sure that we capitalize on that, and that in the future we have more women participating in sport, whether that's, through playing roles or officiating roles, coaching, management, on boards of their community sports clubs. It's really exciting that this World Cup could be the thing, the magic that switches some people into the footballing lane and decides that this is a safe space for them. I think just getting more women involved in general, and then retaining them into the future too, it's a massive part of this legacy program, and I'm excited to see that happen.
I mean, yeah, it's two different things. Like, we looked at what happened when the Qatar World Cup happened, and every single Australian came out of the bushes as a football fan when Australia made it to the round of 16. But it's a whole other level to it when we actually get to host a tournament, and pretty much all of the capital cities in Australia, there's going to be football matches, there's going to be players going on around it. It's a really big opportunity for them to tap into this incredible fan base and really activate a group of people that they probably wouldn't have the opportunity to activate if we didn't have a World Cup on our shores.
Totally. And I think there was a statistic that came out the other day that only 47% of people actually knew that the World Cup was even happening in Australia. And I was like, what? Sometimes you're so siloed into your own work, and you're like, how does not everyone know that this is happening?
But I've been talking about it in the office for months.
Right, like I've been waiting for this for years. But yeah, I think so. Even that state, it kind of does bring you back to reality a little bit, and you go, okay, like sure, we do have a really dedicated fan base of people who are super involved in women's football and who love it, and that's great. But then, how do we get that movable middle? How do we get the people who are like, oh yeah, I've played soccer before, or I kind of know about the Matildas. How do we get them and just turn them into hardcore fans? How do we make everyone fans of the sport that we all love, of the world game, and yeah, have that sustainable footballing future? How do we do that? And I think this is a great opportunity to tap into those people who are maybe fence sitting and say, come down to a game, go to one of the FIFA fan festivals, get tickets if you can get tickets, watch a game. And then I think once they have the opportunity to do that, they'll see how special this Matildas squad is and how special it is that we do have the opportunity to host this World Cup here at home. And I don't have any doubt that we'll have a lot more fans of the game after the World Cup because of that.
Absolutely. And you have to talk as well a little bit about that group of the group of people who sit there and they say that, oh, women's sport isn't as, oh, it's not as exciting, it's not as thrilling, it's not as, they just can't do it the same way as men, when it's not the case. I saw this morning an incredible, one of the sponsors of the French team, I'm not sure if you've seen it, have a look at it, the ad. They did an ad where they CGI'd a women's game, but they actually CGI'd them as the men's team. And it was like, saying that it's like, oh, well, when it's the men's team, like, you think that this is great, but surprise, surprise, it's actually, this is the exact line of play that a women's team did. We just CGI'd it to look like our French national, the men's team.
I have seen that, and I think it's absolutely an incredible ad. Like, if you haven't seen it, go and watch it right now. So great. And yeah, I think that whole idea that there's always going to be, no matter what, you're never going to have 100% of people on board. You're always going to have the naysayers and the doubters. And from my kind of perspective is, don't focus on those people because they're never going to change their minds. You've got a whole bunch of people who are already loving the sport or who are maybe, again, on fence sitting. And those are the people that we should be trying to encourage to watch more women's sport and get involved. Because, yeah, as you've said, people will say things about the game not being as fast paced or as exciting as men's sport. And some of those people, you're just not going to be able to change their minds, and that's fine. Leave them in the dark days, and they can stay there. The rest of us can move forward. But yeah, I think it really does come from that deep-rooted unconscious bias and that way that we've all been socialized. And I think if some people have the opportunity to come and watch games and to realize just how special this opportunity is and how great these women are and how the game is, not any different from men's football. It's still the same sport. Yeah, I think it's an awesome opportunity for people to come and realize that.
And also learn about the stories behind it and learn about, like you mentioned with the Jamaican team, the struggles. You hear about Canada and their football federation, hear about France and their football federation. It's also learning about the struggles and the stories behind the scenes to understand why women's football needs that investment, it needs that support, and it needs more behind it to really take it to that next level.
Totally. And there has been exponential growth. Like, you think about how long men have been playing and you compare that to the amount of time that women have been playing, and men have been playing for decades longer. And, they're at this certain point now after having so much investment, monetarily and just people going to games. And of course, it's going to be at a certain level now after the number of years that people have just been investing into it. I think the way that women's sport has grown in such a short time, the sky's the limit. And yeah, I can't wait to see where we go.
Okay, and then this perfectly good at segueing, but this is our final question. But for you, what does women's football look like in 5 years? What does it look like in 10 years? And where would you like to see it go in the long-term future?
Shorter term, 5 years from now, I see it as people are just really aware of the barriers, of the apprehensions that women might face, and we're starting to work on those things. just as a footballing community, and we're starting to get more and more girls into the game, playing, coaching, officiating across the board. I think, there's the gender parity by 2027 that Football Vic and Football Australia have committed to. I think, with the men's game also growing, it's going to be a really big challenge to get that by 2027. But in 10 years from now, I think that's totally doable. By the 2032 Olympics in Brisbane, that's another massive sporting event that's happening that the Matildas will be a part of. I'd love to see us competing there, winning gold medals, bringing it home. And yeah, I just think in 10 years from now, it won't be men's sport, women's sport, men's football, women's football. It'll just be football. And, these kinds of conversations won't even be necessary. My job at the Office for Women in Sport and Recreation, it won't be needed, because we'll be so far ahead of where we are now that it's completely normal to see women playing just as much as it is to see men playing. Just a little story that a colleague at work told me the other day. They had one of their little cousins who always watches them play football come up to her the other day and said, Adele, like, I saw some men playing. Did you know that men can play football too? And that story, I just thought it was incredible, because so often we see the opposite of that, and just have the tables turned. I was like, yes, this is what the future looks like. This is awesome. So that's, to me, yeah, that's the future. That's what it looks like. And yeah, it's really exciting. And I think we all need to work really hard, and we need to work together to make sure that that is the future. And we have to keep on pushing. But if we do that, I think it's looking really bright.
Perfect. Well, that's everything. Thank you so much for hopping on. You're our very first guest of our little special mini series. So thank you for taking the time out of your very busy day.
Oh, I'm so happy that you had me on. I love talking about all this stuff, so could probably talk forever. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, have a great World Cup, and hopefully the Matildas bring it home.
I can't wait. Let's get some gold medals.